Hi guys, I've had a request for a follow-up on the tube knit, and I wanted to show you all how to complete it on the large scale. The previous video I showed you how to do it on the smaller scale gauge loom. You can see that, and we did this with groups of 4 pegs. Now I'm just going to do a quick follow-up. If you want more of the detail, you can go and watch the first video, which I'll link here. And then this is, you can obviously, this is a much larger scale loom. And while I'm doing this, I'll kind of re-explain the difference on the two. It's just the number of pegs that you use, but I also want to give you some examples on that too. And you know what I'll do? I'll wait until we're done so that you can understand what I'm talking about when I show you these samples. Okay, so let's get started really quick. We're using a long loom, and you can see the difference on the spacing on these two looms, not only in the pegs but in the width between the pegs. You can see how much closer they are. And on this larger loom, you'll see we have this end peg here, and that's going to make a difference. You're going to be completing your project in counts of either 2 or 3 pegs to make this tube knitting, and you're going to incorporate these little end pegs, whereas because this loom is so much closer, you don't really need to use those. So I'm just going to show you really quick how to do the tube knit with this larger scale long loom. Okay, before we get started, what I want to do is I want to show you this little tool that I'm going to use, because I want to show you how to do this on the large scale. We're going to show you how to do both a 2-peg option and a 3-peg option, and to do that I'm going to need this little tool. And what this does is it changes the length of your long loom. And because I'm going to do a pattern of 3 pegs, 2 pegs, 3 pegs, and 2 pegs, that's going to shorten my project. And I want to eliminate these 2 pegs, but I still need an end peg. So what I'm going to do is use this little tool. You can get these on Amazon. You get a pair of them for $4 or $5, I think. And you just pop this into your loom between the pegs and just snap it into place like that. And you get a little bit of flexibility, but it won't move once you snap it between the pegs, and that takes the place of your pegs. So now what we have is we have set up for our pattern 3 pegs, 2 pegs, 3 pegs, 2 pegs, and then our 2 end pegs like so. So that's a fancy little tool. I highly recommend those, especially if you've got a really long loom and you want to make a nice short project. So we're going to go ahead and get started with our Slipknot. The other thing I also recommend is that put a straw on your yarn, because this will make this project much quicker and easier. So let's go ahead and get started with our Slipknot. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to go down into our loom, and we're going to hook this onto our holding peg on the side here. Snug that up a little and put your extra tail of yarn out here. Then you're going to take your working yarn and go between the first 2 pegs, wrap around to the back, and come between again. And then you're going to put your hook up through the yarn, grab and pull your yarn down, flip it over the back. And what we've created is a slip knot on our first peg. So instead of using this slip knot on our peg, we're going to use this slip knot. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to crochet from this peg to this peg. And we can do that without a needle by simply going up with our hook, pulling our yarn down, and flipping it over back onto the next peg. That's how you can eliminate a crochet hook. It has the same effect, and you just do it with your loom knitting hook. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do a flat knit by putting our yarn in the front of this peg, yarning over, and then we're going to snug this up so that our knot is sitting between these 2 pegs, okay? Then we're going to go ahead and crochet another peg, by flipping it over just like that. And again, we're going to do a flat knit on the front. This is our first group of 3 pegs. Now we want to start creating the crossover for our tube. So we're going to come around the back, and we're going to pull this yarn out, and we're going to cross diagonally over to the other side of our loom. Then you're going to go ahead and turn your loom around, and then you want to bring your yarn from the side of where your last peg was. So you don't want to come between these two. You want to come from this peg and do a flat knit. And then you want to snug that up a little bit so that your knot is between the 2 sides of the loom. So here's your knot in the center. And then what you're going to do is you're going to do another crochet. But now, since we're on the other side, we're actually going to go this way and do our crochet like so, and then we're going to do our flat knit. Okay, and snug that up. Again, you're going to come around the back of this peg to do your crochet, pull your yarn down, flip it back, snug it, then you're going to do the front of the peg to do your flat knit. Oops, you know what? We're doing this in a pair of 2. Sorry. Let's take this one off, because we're going to do 3 and 2 and 3 and 2. So here's our 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, exactly the same as I did before, I'm going to come around the back, pull my yarn down, and I'm going to diagonally flip this yarn to the other side of my loom. Then we're going to turn our loom around, and again we're going to come from this peg around the front of this peg. What you don't want to do is you don't want to go between the 2 pegs like this. You're going to go around the front of the peg, do a flat knit, snug it up so that your knot is between the 2 sides of the loom. So we've got 3 and 2. Now we're going to do another set of 3. So we're going to do, this is first peg, now we're going to do our crochet by flipping over, then we're going to do a flat knit. Okay, so then we're going to go around the back, go up with our hook, pull our yarn down and flip over, and then we're going to round front and do our flat knit and snug that up. So again, the knot is between the pegs. Okay, so we have 3 pegs, 2 pegs, 3 pegs. Now we're going to do 2 pegs, and we're going to incorporate our end peg. So we're going to go around the back of the peg to start our crochet, flip across the loom diagonally, snug it up, turn our loom around, and then we're going to go around the front of the peg to do our flat knit. Okay, snug that up so your knot's between the center of the loom. Now we're going to go around from the back around to the front and do a, pull our yarn down. This is our crochet. We're going to snug it up, then we're going to go in front of the peg, do our flat knit, kind of snug that. Again, we're going to come around from the back, pull our yarn down, and then what we're going to do is we're going to flip to our end peg right here. Again, we're going to, I'm going to move this out of the way so we can work. We're going to go in front of the peg to do our flat knit. We're going to snug that up a bit, come around the back of the peg to do our crochet, flip it to this peg. Notice we are not using these 2 pegs, similar to what we would be doing if we were on the end of this loom. We're going at an angle and an angle. We're not going up to here, then to here. We're going to go this way, up to the angle, back down the angle. Okay, let's do our flat knit again. Snug it up a little, and we're going to come from the back and crochet and flip the yarn over, and we're going to come from the front and do our flat knit and snug up. Okay, so now we're going to do, you can see these 3 pegs are already cast on, so we're going to come from the back, pull our yarn down and flip it over diagonally like so, and turn our loom around, and we're going to come around the front and flat knit. and snug that up. Okay, then we're going to come around from the back, do our crochet, snug it, come from the front, do our flat knit. Again, we're working, this is a group of 3, this is a group of 2, so we're going to come around the back and do 1 more crochet, come around from the front, do our flat knit, and then we're going to come around from the back and crochet back onto the other side of our loom. And we're going to flat knit on the front, snug that up so it's between. Then we're going to do a crochet, then we'll do a flat knit with a little snug, and then again this is 3 pegs, this is 2 pegs. We'll go across over to the back here, and again we're going to flat knit right here, snugging up a little, and then here I want to show you this because on this side we've got 2 pegs and then we used our end peg. On this side we've got 3 pegs and we used our end pegs. And I wanted to do that because I want to show you what both are going to look like with the different number of pegs. So we do our crochet, our flat knit, our crochet, our flat knit, snug that up, our crochet, again at an angle there. And we're going to do our flat knit, snug that up. Now what we're going to do on this last peg is we're going to do a crochet, and you see this is our original starting yarn. We're going to pop this off of our starting peg because it needs to be a little looser. We're going to ignore this and do our flat knit like so, snug that up a little, and then you're going to go ahead and knit yarn over our starting peg. So that is the cast on. Now you can do this in just groups of 2. You can do 2, 2, just incorporating this end piece in each section. You can do all groups of 3. I suppose you could do any number of pegs, but it just depends on how big you want your tubes to be in the end. Okay, so you can see we've got large tube, small tube, large tube, small tube. This is the piece that I did with the small scale loom, and you can see how nice and snug it is, and it's thick because I actually I knitted a little tail on my 5 peg loom. This guy right here, I just knitted a really long tail, and then I just stuffed this tube full of a tail, and you can see how thick and cushy it is. It's so soft. It's actually a cowl that I made, but again, I'm digressing. So let's continue with this part of the project. So this part is really simple. We're actually going to go ahead and do a E-wrap knit, and you basically are just going to follow the pattern of the cast on, and you're going to start by just E-wrapping your 3, crossing over, E-wrapping these 2, crossing over. Now you notice when you're crossing over, you're changing the direction of your wrap, because here we're going clockwise. We're going to cross over, I can't speak today, and go counterclockwise, then clockwise. So we've wrapped all of the pegs, and what we're going to do is just yarn these over. Now I mentioned on the smaller scale that you wanted to yarn over in the order that you cast on. On these larger looms it's not necessary. You can actually just do your yarn over on down this side, and then you can flip your loom over and go ahead and go down the other side. Again, we're just gonna do that last loom, and we're gonna do the same thing all the way over on this side. And that's it. I'm going to do it one more time really fast for you. Again, we're doing a clockwise wrap, but when we cross over, we're doing a counterclockwise. Crossover, basically just doing an E-wrap. And you just switch directions when you cross over the loom. Once you get the hang of this, you will be zipping through it, I'm sure, because it's really, really quick. You always do your last peg first, and then you can just yarn over everything else. Now what I want to show you is one more option. Instead of doing an E-wrap knit, you could do a flat knit. It's going to take longer. Basically the difference being is the tightness of your tube. I'll show you this right here. This is the tube done with a flat knit. This is the tube done with E-wrap knit. So you can see there's just a little bit of a difference. The flat knit is tighter. You can see that. Look at the opening on the different sides with the E-wrap knit and the flat knit. And this piece is done with 3 pegs all the way across. But I just wanted to be able to show you the difference between the E-wrap knit and the flat knit. So if you want something a little bit tighter but you want to use the 3 pegs, go ahead and do a flat knit, and you just do that by following your same pattern. And we're just gonna basically flat knit one at a time, and you just go over here and you just put your yarn in front of your peg instead of wrapping behind it, and you're just basically, that's why we call it a flat knit. You're just laying your yarn. Look what I did. Oops. That's supposed to be just 2 pegs. There we go. And you just put your yarn flat in front and yarn over. That's your flat knit right there. I'm just going to go ahead and go all the way around with this one. Again, flat knit. It's a little bit more time consuming because you can't do that really nice fast E-wrap. And we're going to just... Somebody is texting me. Just do a little flat knit like so. I always do them one at a time because if you just lay them across and do them all together, I find that the project just gets really, really tight. So if you were to, like, for example, go like that and yarn over, you can do it, but eventually down the line what you'll find is that your yarn will be so tight that you won't be able to yarn over anymore. So that's why when I'm doing a flat knit, I do the pegs one at a time, just like that. And that would be how you would do the flap knit, okay? And then here's the other thing I wanted to show you. This piece is done with just 2 pegs. It's got a little more spacing, but what I've done is I've kind of filled it with some things to show you. This is giraffe minky. This is like a purple minky in here. This is actually filled with just some t-shirt material. And then this is what I was talking about, doing a tube. I made these little tubes, these little caterpillars or whatever you want to call them, like so. Just using this 5-peg loom, and you just do a bunch of E-wraps and make it as long as your project, and then you just kind of stick it inside, and here's what that looks like when you just fill it. You can see how thick it is and how fat. Make a really nice warm scarf like this blue project that I did. That's how I did this one, is I just made these little caterpillar thingies and just ran them through the tube. So this is done with completely with 2 pegs and completely with the E-wrap knit. And this is done with 3 pegs, and again, this is the E-wrap knit, and this is the flat knit. So I just wanted to give you some options on how you could use this. So let's go ahead, I'm going to show you how to do the cast off. And basically it's the same as, it's exactly the same as with the smaller gauge. You simply E-wrap one peg, move it back one peg, yarn that over. You're going to E-wrap it in the same direction that you E-wrapped this peg. Okay? And then you snug that up. So you E-wrap. When you do an E-wrap, you wrap behind the peg and go around the front and yarn over. Move it back, yarn that over, and then again wrap it the same way, same direction that you wrapped this peg. You wrap this peg, and then you move your yarn forward. So again, we go around the peg and wrap it, yarn over, slip it off of that peg, go back, yarn over, E-wrap the same direction that you were going, and then yarn over. Now when you do the crossover, it might be more helpful to just actually turn your loom around first, because you're going to E-wrap from the back. Okay, so you're switching directions. If we're on this side of the loom, we're E-wrapping like this. When we go to this side of the loom, we're E-wrapping. So you can see this would be clockwise. When we flip sides, we're going counterclockwise. And what we're going to do is we're going to yarn over, and we're going to flip this yarn back one peg, snug it up, and I'm going to flip this just so you can see the direction. Then we're going to yarn over. Now because we're back here and we were working clockwise back here, we're going to continue with a clockwise wrap and then yarn over. Now when we move to this side of the peg, we're working counterclockwise. Okay? So we go with a counterclockwise wrap from the back to the front, yarn over, move back, yarn over, again a counterclockwise E-wrap, and then move this yarn forward. Okay, so those are our two pegs. We're going to cross over again, which means we're now going to wrap clockwise on this side, yarn over, flip the yarn back, yarn over, wrap counterclockwise on this side, yarn over, and flip back. Okay, let's do that again. So we're going clockwise, move our yarn back one peg, yarn it over, wrap clockwise, move it forward, clockwise, move the yarn back, yarn over, wrap clockwise, move the yarn forward. Okay, so we're going to flip our to the other side. We're going to go counterclockwise, yarn over, move this yarn across the loom, snug it up a little, yarn it over, again clockwise, and then yarn over. Now we're coming to the end of our project. This is going to be the counterclockwise direction. Oops, I did that wrong, sorry. We move to the next peg, sorry. Counterclockwise, move the yarn back, counterclockwise, move your yarn forward. Again, we're going to continue counterclockwise until we cross. This is not a cross, this is continuing to cast off. So counterclockwise. Look at my gray hair. Get my gray hair out of there. Move forward. Okay, so we're going to counterclockwise. Move back. Yarn over. Counterclockwise. Move forward. One last one, that's counterclockwise. Move back. Oops, one more wrap, counterclockwise. And move forward. So now we're crossing over. We're going to go clockwise. Move back, snug that up a little bit, not too tight. Counterclockwise. And flip that over. So now we're moving in the clockwise direction. Basically, whatever direction you're moving on your loom, you go behind the peg to move forward. And you do your second wrap in the same direction. When you cross over, you're wrapping in the opposite direction. Flip back. Oops. Flip back. There we go. Snug it up a little. Wrap clockwise. Flip that over, and then we're going to turn around and go counterclockwise. Flip back. Counterclockwise again, flip forward, and then we're going to go clockwise. Okay, so we're just about done. Remember, this was the first one that we cast off. So what we're going to do is we're going to go clockwise. We're going to go back to our extra wrap and go forward. Okay, then we're going to go forward and wrap. Then we're going to bring this peg back here. We're not going to wrap it again. We're going to yarn over, and we're going to pull our project off of our loom. Okay, so pull this little piece of yarn out, and we're going to cut it. Like so. And then what I always do is, I hope that I can show you this, is I take the extra yarn and I go to where the beginning of my cast off starts, right here. And you can use your hook, or you can use a crochet hook, or you can use a tapestry needle. You just want to pull that yarn through that first cast off loop, like so. Okay, so you've come through the first, here's the end of your cast off. Right here you can see your loops, and here's the beginning of your cast off. And then what I do is I just bring it back through this last loop. It's actually going to be easier with this with our tapestry needle. I just had to make sure I was on the right side for the cast off. I'm just gonna run this through the tapestry needle like so, and basically what you do is you go through the first cast off, wrap around, and then go back down through, and what you do is you create an identical loop right there. Okay. And one of the things I like to do on my end pieces is I will take this and actually go on the back of the project and knot it like so, just to give it some extra strength, like that. And then I run it down inside the back of the project. Again, I came out of my tapestry needle, sorry. So again, you can run your extra yarn after you knot it. You can just run your extra yarn down through the project, hide it like so. And there you have, and you can see we have, this is the 3 peg, this is the 2 peg, this is the 3 peg. Okay, so see, you can do different combinations of widths, the number of pegs. So this is what your wide loom knit looks like. This is a 2 peg knit. If you wanted to see a lot of whatever your interior stuffing, I guess you could call it, is, then you might want to use just the 2-peg. Again, if you use a really thick yarn, a 2-peg would be good. And again, this is the project I did using the smaller gauge. I did 4 pegs between crossovers, and then I filled it with little long caterpillars like this that I did on my 5-peg round loom. So I hope that helps you. If you have any more questions, please feel free to post here and I'll be happy to answer them as quickly as possible. So again, thanks for watching. Have a good time with it.